What's up guys, it's Mars from Audio Judgment, and today I'm going to share some tips with you so you can make better speaker boxes. These are tips from my experience, and there are guys out there with far more experience than me, so if you know a better technique, don't hesitate to comment. However, if you want to check out my advices on the topic, just keep watching. Tip number 1. Pay attention to 90-degree angles. Just because you have two perfectly squared panels doesn't mean when they go together it will form a 90-degree angle. If you are a beginner speaker builder, you probably don't have enough clamps. Well, now that I think about it, you can never have enough clamps, but let's just say you have only two clamps. In that case, you are tempted to make the box bit by bit and start by joining only two panels together. This can also be true if you want to assemble an L-shaped port, for example. The fact that you glue them together, align them properly, and clamp them in place doesn't mean the panels will make a 90-degree angle between them. In fact, in my experience, it rarely does so. It looks good to the naked eye, but when you try to fit the other panels, you will see that there will be gaps, and you need to force the panels in place or use excess glue to fill the gaps. To make sure this doesn't happen, you can use some 90-degree clamps. Not all of them are good. The ones I show here are more precise and will net you good results. These clamps are trash. Either I'm not using them properly, or simply they are used for applications where perfect alignment is not an issue. Tip number 2. Pay attention to slot port length. Slot ports are very popular. First of all, you can make them using the same material you are using for the box construction, and secondly, most of the port is made by the box itself, and you only need one or two additional panels to make the port. There are two things you need to be aware when calculating the length of the port. First is the baffle thickness is part of the total length. Since many people use a double baffle, this might be significant, so make sure you factor in the baffle thickness to the total length of the port. And secondly, pay attention when slot ports end near a corner. If the port panel is not long, then the length of the port is equal to the baffle thickness plus the length of the port panel. But as you make the port longer and get closer to the corner, the port gets longer than you might think. If you find out that the length you need makes the port end near the box corner, you can get a bit creative and place the port somewhere else. For example, use the long side of the box to place the port. Tip number 3. Screws. They are not mandatory. Many people believe and insist that screws are a vital component for a high-quality subwoofer box. In my opinion, they are optional to say the least. People think that by installing such a large, beefy subwoofer in an airtight box, you need screws to hold everything together. But the fact of the matter is, the wood glue is doing almost all of the work. Don't get me wrong, screws will be some added strength to the box, but in my opinion, 90% of the box strength or more comes from the wood glue and adequate bracing. However, screws can be an awesome way to assemble a box quick and easy. If you just have a couple of clamps, you can drill your way to a completed box in no time. And you don't have to be careful with it as the glue dries because the screws hold it together. After the glue dries, you need to cover the holes up with wood filler if you want to paint the box. This isn't an issue if you want to wrap the box though. Also bear in mind that if you want to round the edges, the screw holes will get in the way of the router. In my opinion, screws are more of a nuisance, but it can help you out if you don't have enough tools in your workshop. Tip number 4. Mounting circular ports. So you have a base reflex enclosure and a circular port which you bought online. The ones with the flares at both ends. Great! Now when you mount it to your box, I find it completely mandatory that you put something between the box and the port to seal things off and to eliminate unwanted vibration. I've seen people mounting ports directly to the box and just using screws to fix them, and I simply don't know how that doesn't turn out into a rattling mess. What I like to do is to mount them just by using screws, check the resonating frequency, maybe take it out and do some adjustments to the port length, whatever. When I'm done with all of that and I want to fix the port to the box, I like to use silicone sealant. If you use a generous amount, it will ooze out, but you can peel it off after it hardens. I like using silicone because it also acts like an adhesive and the port is fixed to the box not just by the screws. Also, it absorbs vibration very good since it's similar to rubber when it's hardened. Silicone is great for this kind of stuff, but I have to admit it's not the most elegant solution. However, you can use any mastic-like substance if you are afraid you are going to make a mess. But whatever you choose, use something. Don't screw the port directly to the box. Having plastic touching wood directly is a bad idea. Tip number 5. Binding posts. When it comes to binding posts, I exclusively use those that look like bolts. They are awesome. You just drill 2 holes into your box and you stick them in. Tighten the nut, get a cable with a ring connector at one end or solder the included one, fix it in place with the other nut and you're done. Never had any leaking issues, it's just plug and play and success guaranteed. If you are using the binding posts which are inside cups, you are just asking for a more difficult installation. First of all, if you have a rectangular one, it's a pain to make a rectangle cutout. If it's round, it's easier with a larger drill bit. Secondly, you have to seal it off with something because it's the same thing here like it is with the circular port. To be fair, some come with sponge-like sealant pre-applied. However, I wouldn't trust the thermal cup sitting in the screws alone unless you have a low power speaker. For high power subwoofers, I've seen those thermal cups fly off when they're fixed in just 4 screws. So for binding posts, use the bolt type. They're awesome. And now for a bonus tip. Cutting accuracy. Is it that important? This tip will be sort of a contradiction to the first tip, but hear me out. When you're cutting your panels, if you can be precise with your cuts, it will make your life a whole lot easier. Making speaker boxes is not like making a cabinet for your living room. The thing needs to be airtight, so every millimeter counts. If your panels have 1-2 millimeters extra or missing, you will notice this and will have a hard time assembling such a box. Now, I included this tip to not scare the beginners who want to try building their first box. Don't worry if you don't have the most precise tools. Even if your cuts are 1 millimeter off, you can still assemble a box. I myself have done this recently. I went to a Home Depot-like store and asked them to cut me some MDF panels. When I arrived to the shop, I noticed there are plus minus 1 millimeter variations on all the panels. The panels will go together, but you need to add some excess glue to the spots where they don't fit perfectly. Of course, this is not a clean job, and you also need extra effort to trim and flatten the edges when the box is finished. A router with a flush trim bit and a sander will help you immensely. If you don't have power tools, a sanding block and Popeye forearms will do the job in a couple of long, agonizing hours. Conclusion is that I made a box using rough cut panels. It wasn't pleasant, but it works like any other box. These are my advices for box building, well, at least uncommon enough that you don't find them all over the internet. And if you have any advices that made your life easier or better techniques than the ones I mentioned, make sure to share them in the comments. Also, if you like the video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel to not miss any new videos. I post a video once per month. So, see you next time. Peace!